You're scrolling through real estate listings at midnight, not because you're planning to buy a house tomorrow, but because you're curious, just browsing. And every single listing that doesn't look like it belongs in a horror movie costs around $500,000. You click one, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, built in 1997. The kitchen still has laminate countertops. The carpet is beige. There's wood paneling in the basement that looks like it came straight out of a 1980s sitcom. And somehow, this is listed as a starter home. Meanwhile, you're sitting there doing mental math on your salary, trying to figure out if you missed some secret promotion everyone else got, or if the entire housing market has just collectively lost its mind. And here's the thing, you're not crazy, because the math behind a $500,000 house in 2026 is brutal, like financial reality check brutal. And today we're going to break down exactly who can actually afford one, not who the bank will approve, not who the real estate agent says should be fine, but who can actually afford it without turning their life into a financial stress simulator. Because those are two very different things. My name is Lucas, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, housing, and why the math behind big financial decisions almost never gets explained honestly. If you're someone who's looked at housing prices recently and thought, wait, how are normal people supposed to afford this? Make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because today we're going to run the numbers behind a $500,000 house. And by the end of this video, you might realize something most people never stop to calculate. Here's the thing. When people talk about buying a house, they usually talk about the price. But the price of a house is actually the least important number. What matters is the monthly cost of owning it. Because a $500,000 house doesn't cost $500,000. It costs everything that comes with it. And this is where it gets really interesting. Let's start with the traditional rule. You've probably heard this before. 20% down. On a $500,000 house, that's $100,000 in cash. Let that sink in for a second. Because according to Federal Reserve data, the median savings account balance in America is around $8,000. So if you're aiming for a $100,000 down payment, you're not a little short. You're about $92,000 short. Now you might be thinking, okay, but nobody actually puts 20% down anymore. And you're right, most buyers today put down 5 to 10%. But here's what most people don't realize. When you put less than 20% down, you unlock something called PMI, Private Mortgage Insurance. And this is basically a monthly fee you pay because the bank thinks you're risky. The really fun part? This insurance doesn't protect you, it protects the bank. And it usually costs somewhere between $200 and $400 per month. So, before you've even moved into the house, you're already paying an extra bill. Let's say you somehow save 10% down. That's $50,000, which leaves you with a $450,000 mortgage. Now, interest rates today are hovering around 6 to 7%. At those rates, your monthly mortgage payment for principal and interest is roughly $2,800 per month. Now, a lot of people hear that number and think, okay, that sounds manageable. But here's the problem. That's just one piece of the bill. Owning a house comes with a bunch of costs people forget about. Let's add them up. Property taxes. Depending on where you live, that could be $4,000 to $8,000 per year. We'll be conservative and say $500 per month. Homeowner's insurance, another $250 to $350 per month. Maintenance. And this is the one everyone underestimates. The rule of thumb is 1% of the home value per year. For a $500,000 house, that's $5,000 annually, or about $417 per month. Now add PMI. Let's say $300 per month. Now let's total everything up. Mortgage, $2,800. Property tax, $500. Insurance, $300. Maintenance, $417. PMI, $300. Your actual monthly housing cost is now around $4,317 per month. And that's assuming nothing breaks. Financial advisors recommend spending no more than 28% of your gross income on housing. Banks will approve you closer to 43%. But let's use the responsible number first. If your housing costs are $4,317 per month, and that represents 28% of your income, then you need to be earning roughly $185,000 per year. Let me repeat that. To comfortably afford a $500,000 house, the math says you should be making around $185,000 annually. Now, here's where it gets shocking. According to U.S. Census data, only about 15 to 20% of households make that much, which means roughly 80% of households cannot comfortably afford a $500,000 home. And that's not an opinion, that's just math. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but people are still buying these houses. And you're right, they absolutely are. But here's what most people don't realize. A lot of those buyers fall into one of three categories. First, dual high-income households. Think two professionals making six figures. Second, family money, parents helping with down payments. And third, people stretching themselves way too thin. And this is where the psychology gets interesting, because humans are incredibly good at convincing themselves that future income will solve present problems. We tell ourselves things like, I'll get a raise next year. My side hustle will grow. Interest rates will drop. But here's the dangerous part. Those are all guesses. And mortgages are 30-year commitments. Let's imagine a household earning $160,000 per year. That sounds like a lot of money. And objectively it is. But after taxes, retirement contributions, and deductions, their take-home pay might be around $9,500 per month. Now, subtract the $4,317 housing cost. They're left with about $5,200. Now, let's subtract some normal expenses. 2 car payments, $800, car insurance, $250, gas, $300, student loans, $600, health insurance, $400, groceries, $800, utilities and internet, $450. Now, we're down to about $1,600 left per month, and that has to cover everything else. Clothing, medical expenses, vacations, savings, emergencies, car repairs, kids' activities. And here's what that feels like in real life. It feels like checking your bank account before going grocery shopping. It feels like delaying repairs because the budget is tight. It feels like living in a beautiful house while constantly worrying about money. This is what people call being house poor. The real risk of an expensive house isn't the mortgage. It's the lack of margin in your life. Margin is the financial space between your income and your obligations. It's what lets you invest. It's what lets you handle emergencies. It's what lets you sleep at night. When housing eats half your income, that margin disappears, and suddenly every unexpected expense feels like a crisis. The housing market doesn't actually care if the numbers make sense. Prices rise because buyers keep paying them. Banks approve loans based on risk calculations. Real estate agents get paid when deals close. But none of those systems are designed to protect your financial life. They're designed to complete transactions, which means the only person responsible for protecting your financial future is you. So, if you're looking at a $500,000 house right now, here's the practical approach. First, calculate the true monthly cost. Include taxes, insurance, maintenance, and PMI. Second, make sure housing stays below 30 to 35% of your income. Third, keep an emergency fund, at least 6 months of expenses. And finally, don't buy a house just because society says you should. Buying a house that stretches your finances too far doesn't build wealth. It builds stress. Real wealth comes from flexibility, from being able to save, invest, and handle life's surprises. Look, I'm not anti-homeownership. For many people, it can be an amazing financial tool, but only when the numbers actually work. Because the goal isn't just to own a house. The goal is to build a life where money supports your freedom instead of controlling it. So, if you're running the numbers on a $500,000 house right now, take a step back. Do the math honestly, ignore the pressure, and make the decision that's actually right for your financial future. Because sometimes the smartest financial move isn't buying the house everyone expects you to buy. Sometimes it's waiting until the math finally makes sense.